Hello everyone and welcome to the Mancini the Amazing channel. I have been logged out of my account. I assume, presumably because I had recently filmed an A to Z episode and someone else logged out. But here we are on New Year's Day. Truly one of the most blessed of days. We are well on our way from, we've gone past the Catholic Christmas, I think most of the way through Hanukkah. I don't actually know the time frame for Hanukkah. Is it one of those holidays that isn't it like, it's well over, right? But because I think it's like lunar. I don't remember. I hate trying to remember whether holidays are like solar or lunar. Anyways, we're well on our way to Orthodox Christmas, and there are several other holidays that have happened around this period. But the important thing is that now today is New Year's Day. So I hope all of you have an incredible 2024. I'm filming this a little bit earlier in 2023, as you can see on screen, and I just wanted to open up the new year with the new Pokemon blessed to us in this incredible episode. So here I intend on going through, breaking down sort of my initial thoughts as well as what I've seen. I've watched a few videos and I've seen some tournament performances for these Pokemon, and just give like a general impression of how I think they will do within the context of VGC standard format as well as VGC draft. So, singles bros, I'm sorry, but this video is also for you. You're not allowed to stop watching just because you only play singles. It's still interesting, I think, to look through the new Pokemon. And to start that off, it's actually possible that most of these Pokemon won't be legal because Walking Wake and Iron Leaves have not been legal so far. But I think they're all going to be legal now, based off of a hunch, and you guys will know when this video comes out whether only two of the Pokemon I'm talking about are of any import. So Pecharunt is a mythical, so it's not going to be legal, and Terapagos is a restricted legendary, so it's not going to be legal. That said, if it was legal, it would be very, very, very good. So instead, we're going to break down these remaining Pokemon, featuring 2 standard Pokemon and 6 Paradox Pokemon, and take a look at what we think. And my perspectives on Walking Wake and Iron Leaves are going to be significantly more developed than my perspectives on the other 6 because I've actually used them. So, first off, Archaludon, the evolution to Duraludon. Honestly, I didn't realize that their pictures here weren't there because I've seen these. Archaludon has access to Stamina, which is an honestly phenomenal buff that Duraludon is jealous of. Boosting your defense by 1 stage after being damaged is great, and then still has access to Stalwart, preventing your moves from being redirected to a different target. Now, it has good HP, good defense, access to Body Press as well, so that's very relevant. It has very good synergy with Stamina. That said, the other thing that's kind of nice with Stamina is having a reasonable special defense, which is something Archaludon sort of fails on. It seems like a Pokemon that's going to want like screens or an Assault Vest or maybe a Tinglu on the team. That's it, that's all achievable. I don't know how good Tinglu is going to be in the format, though. I think it's probably still going to be quite rubbish. Now, speed-wise, 85 speed's okay. 105 attack and 125 special attack are both relevant. I think it would have appreciated not getting more attack, because Duraludon's part of its problem is that it's got a lot of stats, but some of them are in attack when they really don't want to be. That said, it does have a reasonable physical move pool. It does not get Dragon Dance, though, which is... It feels like an odd oversight when they were giving it more attack, and its speed is, I think Duraludon is 70, but honestly Duraludon could also be 85. No, I think Duraludon is also 85. And Duraludon classically has not been very good in VGC, because ignoring redirection is not important on a Pokemon that is slow enough that the thing they're trying to redirect for has probably already happened, and doesn't have any super effective move into most Trick Room setters. Now, the main flaw of Archaludon is that it didn't really expand its coverage. It's still really just Steel, Dragon, and Electric. With like, okay, it's got Dark Pulse. Actually, I think Aura Sphere might be new, but I don't know if Duraludon it's new too as well. But yeah, Breaking Swipe is a very high value move in thing, and this new move Hard Press is interesting. I think it's not very good on a very heavy Pokemon, so if you're getting high base power Heavy Slam, then you probably don't want to run Hard Press, but it might be okay. Metal Burst is fine as a move. Meteor Beam is funny, but I don't know if it's something that Archaludon can really run very effectively. because of the aforementioned bad special defense. And then really the interesting thing is its own signature Meteor Beam, which is 10 base power higher and 100% accuracy, and in rain has no charge. That said, it's not stab, so you have to either Terra to make it stab or sort of live with that. That said, I think that this makes this Pokemon very potent on rain or on Taunt style teams, because you can still, just for one thing, not lead this, but like you can always set the Tailwind and then rain with Taunt is a very common turn 1, turn 2 for a Tornadus, and being able to get that Electro Shot off definitely can accelerate, and this Pokemon's speed means that it is pretty effective in rain. I think its defensive typing of Steel and Dragon has always been a mixed bag. It's made Dialga really struggle in formats where Dialga's been legal. It's like Dialga, it seems like a Pokemon that would be incredibly broken until you remember, oh, it doesn't resist Fairy anymore, and that means that as a Steel type, it is going to struggle into a lot of the Pokemon that Steel types are most important to check against. Now, Archaludon also has bad special defense. Like, Dialga has bad special defense, but that's for an Uber. Dialga has good special defense, net. So, the 65 special defense of Archaludon means, so just, so if for example, here's, I don't know why this is, sorry, I know it's because it's a single set, that's why it's Hurricane, but like it's taking a bunch from Bleak Wind. Obviously, Taunt often can run modest, but it is often not going to have quite as much special attack as this. But that's not doubles. Never mind, that's fine. I guess the base HP is pretty good. The Flutter, just like a standard offensive Flutter, is just picking it up with a boost or energy boost, or a Life Orb, which is definitely a concern. So I really do think Assault Vest is pretty important on this Pokemon, or Speed Control. How much is it doing with Flashback? So if you're running Special, okay, not getting the initial one-hit KO on even like a frail Flutter like that is a bit painful. Like if you're like running like a Specs Flutter, that's the same spread. Okay, all of these Flutters just the same spread, because I definitely have seen more than one Flutter spread. I honestly thought that would be Sash. But yeah, depending on what the investment for Flutter that's popular at the time is, yeah. So even this one that just has 100 base HP, you're not getting that KO even without a boosting item. So I do think that's a concern. That does mean that I think you'll basically always be running some form of mixed. Just 0- attack into a relatively bulky Flutter, that's certainly not the bulkiest I've seen, is still picking it up. I think Archaludon ultimately sits in a B or a C tier. I think if we're talking about in net of Pokemon altogether, it's one that sits in the higher side of Pokemon, just in general. It's quite, like, it's bulky, it's got access to stamina, it does have that body press. It's really on the special defense that is a flaw. You throw an Assault Vest and then that's not really a major concern. Or it's not as much of a concern. Obviously there's ways to mitigate the impacts of Assault Vest, which you put in on the item slot, such as Helping Hand. So there's definitely, I think, reasonable concerns in relation to that, where Archaludon has some struggle in the special attack side, some struggle in the speed side, and then a lot of struggle on the special defense side, where you kind of strike that balance is going to be something really interesting to see, and definitely something that would be very malleable. If you're an Assault Vest set and you believe that body press is useful, like for example, if you don't have Rain and you're probably not running Electro Shot, then I think there is going to be some very different Archaludon sets. That said, I think it is mostly going to feature on Rain. I think because of that archetypal specificity. Look, I could definitely see, it winning a tournament, and by that I mean like a regional. Maybe even an NIC. But I don't think it is a Pokemon that is going to be doing that as consistently as a mon like Fluttermane. I, in general, don't think that any of these Pokemon are necessarily S tiers, which is why there isn't an S tier. That said, I also don't think any of these Pokemon are just completely terrible. But if there's one Pokemon that might be completely terrible, that Pokemon would definitely be Hydrapple. So 120 special attack, certainly not bad. That's more than Latias. 110 defense, 106 HP, certainly not bad. That's more than Latias. I actually think that is the same. That's more HP than Latias at the very least. I'm actually not entirely sure whether that is Ortho Latias altogether though. Let me just double check that. I need to log in to... But I don't want to do it on this screen because that's the screen that you guys are watching. I'm just going to pull it off this screen and refresh. Okay. Hydrapple. Super Sweet Syrup is funny. If you watched my video that's coming out tomorrow, you'll see us using Diplin's Super Sweet Syrup. Regenerator is a very impactful, like it's a very high impact ability, but it's for Pokemon that like switching a lot. I don't believe this Pokemon even has access to U-turn, unlike the other evolutions of, well, I think Appleton also doesn't, but Flapple has U-turn. And Sticky I don't think is that relevant. So that's right, I was supposed to check Latias. Is it just physically bulkier than Latias? Obviously the typing is different as well. Yeah, it's actually notably physically bulkier than Latias, yeah. I admittedly don't rate the Latias as much as I would have if it was several gens ago. But yeah, so Flapple is going to take hits, and it's going to take them pretty well. Not Flapple, Hydrapple. So I think you're basically always going to be running max HP unless there are other stats that you're investing in the sense of like you're running direct special defense or physical defense investment. And the Pokemon is, so let's look at Latias. Yeah, it turns out level 50 is, like, I mean, it's not even KOing with level 100. Let's just throw Draco on this set. And, okay, I mean, that's so you're definitely still prone to taking hits from Pokemon that have decent attack on the special side because of that lower special defense. Now, what about a random Pokemon that's super effective physically? Mimikyu, go back to level 50. Yeah, I mean, you're living a Life Orb Mimikyu. Mimikyu's not super relevant in the current format, but it is a Pokemon that finds itself capable of being relevant, and honestly couldn't think of another physical fairy type or immediately super effective Pokemon that wasn't Gen Power off the top of my head. So look, it's got reasonable bulk. It's capable of taking especially physical super effective hits, and you can definitely invest to take the special super effective hits. It also has a signature move down here called Fickle Beam up here, which is 80 base power. So it's competing with Dragon Pulse for the consistent move. It has a 30% chance to be a 160 base power move, and then if you combine that with critical hits, then that 160 base power move is actually a 240 base power move. That's right, if you get both of them hitting at the same time, then you have triple the damage, which makes sense because even though this picture is not showing you, the Hydrapple has 3 heads. I don't fully know how it evolved from Diplin, but you know, it is what it is. But yeah, Draco is definitely still very good, so if you have a plan that leads to some flexibility for switching out, Draco is probably still your bread and butter. Still doesn't have access to Leech Seed, which is like a really serious concern for something that is like slow and bulky. So it might be Pokemon where you are going for the very high Draco damage or Fickle Beam damage. Access to Hydro Pump is interesting, but not great on a dragon. I don't know that there are a lot of Pokemon that Hydro Pump is super relevant into, especially not with like 3 big water resists being added to the format, and like no, like you're the only water weakness that's being introduced. So that would be a bit of a concern. No, I mean there's probably other Pokemon that are relevant that just aren't new. Yeah, so reasonable physical defense, access to Body Press, but it doesn't. Does it have Iron Defense? Yeah, no Iron Defense. It lacks Sustain, which I think is going to mean that this will probably top cut a regional, maybe 2 regionals. I don't think there's a level win in a regional, and if it does, that would be due to the incredible efforts of a very dedicated player who is intentionally trying to use Hydrapple, rather than being because Hydrapple is inherently very good. I think this is a really low C Pokemon, which I don't think its base stat total is. I mean, that's not a bad base stat total. I actually don't know what Archaludon's. So Archaludon's is 600, and then all of the other 6 that we'll be looking at are 590, So Hydrapple has significantly less stats, and I think probably one of the worst of the typings. Though Psychic in general is a mediocre typing, so not shocking. It has a bunch of random coverage, and the random coverage is all fine. I think it'll be very useful, very easy to use in drafts to pull off effectively in and out in Trick Room, and also out of Trick Room in bulkier teams. And hey, if you get that Fickle Beam off in Trick Room, it's pretty good. So yeah, I definitely think it's sitting in C. It's significantly less consistent than any of the other Pokemon that are introduced here. It's got the worst signature move, well, unless you're just good at the game, and it is just more prone to losing to the other players' Pokemon doing things, even if it takes hits. Fine. Both of these Pokemon have issues with their special defense being lower. Obviously, more of an issue for Archaludon, who has less HP and less special defense, but the worst defensive typing means that there are going to be a lot more random Pokemon who can kill them. That said, I think a major concern both these Pokemon have with their dual typing is they're dragon types that don't resist fire. Conveniently, we have several dragon types in a row that do resist fire, and if Sun is relevant at all in this format, not resisting fire, or even gouging fire, if they're relevant at all in the format, not being able to resist fire is going to be difficult for these Pokemon if they're trying to fill in that dragon sort of role, or even the steel sort of role for. I should put Archaludon instead of Draludon. I'm not used to it yet. Not having that Heatran immunity is quite annoying. But yeah, look at the difference in how many resists you have. These are good 4x resists to have. Like, they're really premium 4x resists. But only having 2 weaknesses and this many resists is nice. And these weaknesses definitely are a bit challenging to have. Honestly, I just realized it's 5 dragon types. If only they'd made one of the other guy's dragon. So, Walking Wake also only has 2 weaknesses. It has less resists, but they are also pretty premium resists in fire and water. And steel is fine in the current format. It's a format where a lot of Pokemon will click steel moves in ways that are very predictable and that you can punish by switching Walking Wake in. I've used Walking Wake in a draft league. It was doubles OU. Walking Wake's really good. Photosynthesis ability, when you are in Sun, you get boost, and you have access to Hydro Steam. In Sunny Day, it does more damage instead of less damage. It is 120 base power. Now, this move is very good. The Iron Leaves move is not very good, and the difference is because Electric Terrain's way worse than Sun, and Iron Leaves is also just worse than Walking Wake. And it's like a psychic move and everything. Hydro Steam is good because if your opponent clicks Rain Dance against your Sun, you still do 1.5x damage with Hydro Steam. You just lose the photosynthesis boost, which often you do want to leverage for speed. This 109 speed is something that you very consistently feel pressured to get speed boost with. I think this mon is absurdly good on a team that can give it Sun. It is very difficult to switch into the Hydro Steam and Draco combination, especially if you can give it a Life Orb with the Proto Boost. It is very, very consistent as a damage dealer. It also has a lot of really interesting options. So it does have reasonable bulk, 99, 91, 83. None of those are bad stats. 83 is obviously the closest to it. Walking Wake is, I'm just gonna sort of use the Mimikyu. Got to put the level 50 in manually. Yep, it is dying to a Life Orb Mimikyu play rough. As just sort of but without the boost, it is living some weaker, super effective stab moves on the physical side. And then let's just put it back in. Sorry, let's just put it in the Scarf Latias. It's not taking that Draco, even from the bulkier sort of Latiases. But what about bulky Fleur Moonblast? The speed booster one. That's really easy to invest for. Yeah, I definitely Walking Wake is very capable of taking that, and you also have the ability to terrestrialize. The great thing about Dragon and Fairy is that they are both resisted by steel, so it is very easy to figure out what terrestrialization is most advantageous for you. On top of that, yeah, it has access to Dragon Dance with 83 attack, which is not unusual by any means. It's a very well-rounded Pokemon in terms of stats. It has Flip Turn, which you run on choice items. You can run Hone Claws with Hydro Pump, Arcane, and Sun. It's got access to Scald, which is fine. I just think Hydro Steam is generally more consistent, even if the Scald burn is nice. Not more consistent, yeah, because the higher power that you can get from being in Sun is very cool. But if you're not planning on bringing Sun, you can definitely use Scald, which is probably more of a draft tech, but who knows. Breaking Swipe is something that I did use in draft for the support option, and honestly, it was very strong. You know, I did want to use an Overroar at one point, but I felt like generally when you're running defensive Walking Wake, because of that weaker special defense, you do very consistently feel pressured to run an Assault Vest, and with the Assault Vest, you obviously can't use an Overroar, so you do sometimes put I did put Whirlpool on for some especially defensive opposing water types on the Assault Vest set. But yeah, Knockoff, Draco, Flamethrower. I mean, Flamethrower on Kingdra basically it just feels really strong. So I will say this mon is pretty easy to put in A. I think it is going to consistently do okay. I think you're gonna see a Walking Wake in Top Cut at most regionals. Not all, so I don't think it'll be consistently winning, but I do think it is a very strong contender. Let's put you all the orders all random. So that's sort of where I'm feeling it. Now, speaking of Top Cut Pokemon, this Pokemon seems very good. Gouging Fire, completely new Pokemon. It has 91 speed, 115 attack, 121 defense, 93 special defense, and then a juicy 105 SPDF. Now, one thing this is nice about Gouging Fire for Walking Wake is it doesn't waste a bunch of stats on its not used, it's bad offensive stat, so that's nice. That said, the main down trait is it doesn't have the same premium coverage. Its coverage is not bad. Earthquake is definitely usable. Stone Edge is fine. Psychic Fangs is an improvement on Zen Headbutt, which I've used on Entei before. Iron Head is fine. You know, they're all okay. Crunch as well. None of them are the same premium of Water, Fire, Dragon, where it's just like, okay, well, what am I checking you with? The answer is like Primarina. Oh yeah, Primarina is like sort of like the main defensive answer to these stabs. But the answer to this is still Primarina. It's just a few other Pokemon. You know, it's also Fire and Dragon types, like opposing. No, that's not true. Fire and Fairy types, but there's no Fire Fairies. So that's not relevant. Heatran's definitely more annoying, though you do have access to Earthquake. A lot of Terrors with Flash Fire can sort of check it, like Terra Fairies, because you don't really have a way to hit Fairies outside of your Fire stat. But that's still not super prominent. So I definitely think it's good. It also has access to Burning Bulwark, which really shouldn't be under usually useless moves. It's okay. So it's like King Shield and Baneful Bunker, where it doesn't protect you from status moves, so you can still get Thunder Wave through it. But if you are hit with a contact move, they burn. So that is worse than Spiky Shield, which I believe does protect you from moves. I'll just double check that. Yeah, it protects from moves rather than just damaging moves. So being able to get Thunder Waved through this is obviously not great, but still fine. Access to Scale Shot, I think there's definitely a strong chance that Scale Shot will be an effective move. Stomping Tantrum is the other ground option it has, as well as Bulldoze. Breaking Swipe is actually like genuinely scary off of this, especially if you have Attack Booster. I do think Body Press maybe would have been interesting on it, but I mean, if you guys have seen my latest draft game that came out at some point, oh yeah, last week, on Christmas. Christmas is only in a week. Sorry, that meme is stuck in my head. Christmas is no longer only in a week. Definitely, I have like an addiction to Iron Defense, but I think this Pokemon is very, very strong. It's very capable of putting out things. I think you'll see this Mon on a number of winning teams at different events, and certainly coming to finals consistently. I think Gouging Fire is very good. I don't think it's like as like was it like Fluttermane, Arcanine, and Amoonguss were winning, or like they were in every finals for like an entire regulation. It's not that level of good. But I do think Gouging Fire is very, very strong, and it's we should continue this last week. It's a really interesting typing, so it doesn't have a lot of great resistances. but its weaknesses are honestly pretty not that much of a problem. Ground is definitely good in the format. There are Pokemon running Rock as coverage moves, with the exception of Iron Boulder being introduced. There are not that many relevant, and Arcanine. There are not that many relevant opposing Rock types. And guess what? You're 1 point faster than Arcanine. Also, by the way, all of the Paradox Scarlet Pokemon are, like the photosynthesis ones, are odd stats on all their stats. And the other ones are all even on all their stats. Anyways, Raging Bolt. This Pokemon also seems incredibly good. It has a monster special attack. It's got reasonable speed, one that is really good with support, but not one that's particularly relevant outside of that. Its HP stat is sublime, absolutely incredible. And I forgot to do the defensive calcs with Gouging Fire. Gouging Fire. Yeah, I mean, let's do the so just like a Spec Slutter, you eat it. I think this is probably somewhere that Arcanine, just like in Solfest Arcanine, you actually take the Rock Slides incredibly well because of Gouging Fire's highest stat being its physical defense. You're not taking Head Smash, but the fact that with like basically no bulk, you reliably take Rock Slides and you are faster than it and can threaten it with the KO from ground coverage makes Gouging Fire seem very, very capable defensively in the current format. Now, obviously, who knows how much the format will change. Definitely Regulation E's pre-format things were not necessarily representative of how good the format overall was. Is that the wording I'm trying to use? Am I saying the right words here? The Regulation E stuff, it didn't necessarily show how good how good like the format actually wound up being. There were a lot of Pokemon that showed to be stronger than they had been in initial testing, so that's certainly very possible. But I think at this point, you're still likely to see Hisui and Arcanine. It's still likely to be a relevant meta Pokemon. Then Raging. So, yeah. Now on to Raging Bolt. Sorry. Access to Calm Mind is really nice on this. Let's do the good old Mega Ampharos. And then outside of that, or much more relevantly, Zekrom. So it's got a really decent collection of resists. Flying is a really premium resist. I think this Pokemon is going to be absolutely insane in Draft League because it has access to not just the physical move, but it's showing up to use this move, Thunderclap. This is Flint, Sucker Punch, but special and electric type. That is pretty good. It turns out moving faster than your opponent and hitting them with a really strong move off of this phenomenal, monstrous special attack stat is good. I think this Pokemon is likely to be very good. So then on top of that, you've got the classic Raging Bolt. Just having really random coverage outside of that. So it does have access to Body Press, even though its defense is quite bad, and then its attack is like actually genuinely not very good, but it has Dragon Hammer for some reason. That said, it also looks like it's also a dragon with a very long neck, so I'm supported having Dragon Hammer. It just won't be able to use it particularly effectively. So yeah, one of the main downsides is you are basically, I think, always going to want to run this in Sun, or potentially Rain, but generally Sun, with that Weather Ball to accompany the fact that you just really don't have great coverage. You have Terra Blast as well, which is fine. I don't know if we're going to see a format where you really want to use the Terra Electric Thunderclap. There are definitely going to be at least draft games where that seems like a really pertinent option. It does have access to Rising Voltage. May well be relevant, but manual electric terrain has not been good, and they didn't add a new Electric Surge Pokemon. Do you really want to run Pincurchin with another electric type? With Raging Bolt, I don't think so. So I think you are mostly just taking advantage of either weather, because obviously very good synergy with Sun, with photosynthesis, or you are just putting on a team and being like, okay, this Pokemon is reasonably bulky, it's got access to Calm Mind, it's got that very juicy HP stat. So let's go to Raging Bolt. I mean, obviously it's got a very good defensive profile as well, which was part of the point. But let's just go back to the Mimikyu that we've decided. Oh, there's a there's level 50 like you said. I mean, yeah, that's something it's very easy to invest for. If it's not running a life orb, yeah, obviously Mimikyu's not a particularly relevant mon in the format, and I don't anticipate it to be a particularly relevant mon in the format. But yeah, it is a benchmark, and I do think that there's a benchmark that Raging Bolt passes reasonably well for a Pokemon that is this strong. Let's just sort of put this into comparison. Thunderclap. Come on. Booster. 252 and Modest. Yeah. This is a priority move. That seems pretty reasonable for a priority move into a Pokemon. Yeah, that's got pretty good special defense. It's like Shifu, Rapid Strike. Bam. You don't even need the booster for it. That's pretty good. So I think Raging Bolt is definitely going to feel incredibly strong. I think these are two of the three mons. I'm with you. I think these two are also going in A, so maybe I still should have had an S. You know what, I'm just gonna. Yeah. I'm just gonna pop these all down a tier. Well, no, I'm gonna put Walking Wake down a tier. And I do think these Pokemon are very good. Gouging Fire maybe could be an A instead of S, but I think this Pokemon is going to be very, very easy to support and very easy to make super impactful. I've been using Zapdos on a bunch of random teams because Zapdos is just really easy to use, and this is like it doesn't have the recovery, it doesn't have the exact same defensive profile, but it still has a really good, really appealing defensive profile, and it still does have that same access to Calm Mind. Sorry, and it has access to Calm Mind, which Zapdos does not, and that is a really big buff. And I do think that this Pokemon is going to have really consistent damage output. And Taunt is certainly no meager option either. I think if this mon didn't have Weather Ball, I would feel worse about it, but it does. So now we go into the Iron Pokemon. Iron Leaves is a guy. It's got 130 attack, which is nice. It's got 104 speed, which is good. It basically always tends to run Terra Fighting or like a random Terra Blast. Grass Psychic has not traditionally been a particularly good type in the history of VGC. I'm trying to decide if that is an understatement or just an accurate statement. I think that is just an accurate statement. It is weird. And it has Psyblade, which, like I mentioned, this move should not be treated as equivalent to Hydro Steam, because it's a worse type, and it's got a much worse condition, which is generally why Cork Drive Mons have run Booster Energy and not Pincurchin. So, yeah, and then you are generally running Leaf Blade. You might run Mega Horn. I think Close Combat you see very commonly. Sacred Sword you sometimes see. It would really depend on if there is much defense boosting in the format outside of like a Quark Drive defense boost. You know, if it was my format where everything's running Iron Defense Body Press, Sacred Sword would also be everywhere. It does have access to Trailblaze. I remember someone running Trailblaze against me with Iron Leaves, and then I was like, wow, I feel really sorry for my opponent, because they basically threw it by running Trailblaze. It just did no damage. It's not very consistent, but there are probably some situations in draft you can use it. This Pokemon's bulk is okay, but you know, if we start looking, well, as we go through the Psychic types, we are reminded that Psychic is a terrible type that no Pokemon loves being. There are sort of like two things that make anyone do the Psychic type stuff, and Iron Leaves is one of them. Is that what I mean to say? Did I mean to say Iron Leaves is one of them? No. Indeedee is one of them, Farigiraf is one of them. There's like Armarouge, Cresselia. They tend to be bulky, support-oriented, or have access to Expanding Force with a good special attack stat. This Pokemon does not have a good special attack stat, but would you look at that, I believe it does have Expanding Force in the DLC? Or maybe not. I think the other two do at least. Do you line it? Am I going insane? I know Iron Crown does. It's a DLC, TM in the DLC. So, yeah, I think this Pokemon very frequently needs a Swords Dance boost to be able to do any damage. Often Booster Energy is not enough, and you often also want the booster in speed, because its speed is quite mediocre, and it is weak to just a very broad preponderance of moves. With all these Pokemon that really advantage from having Sun in the format, I think it's going to be extra difficult to take advantage of Iron Leaves. I've traditionally found it to be okay, but not particularly good. It does have access to Coaching, which is a really relevant support move in the current format. I just am concerned that its lackluster physical defense is maybe an issue there. I don't. It's also not always going to be the faster Pokemon in a matchup. I mean, the U-turn is just sort of is. At least it's taking an Ice Spitter from Scarlet, which is nice because Scarlet is faster. It's taking, I think it is taking, a booster special attack Flutter. You could definitely EV for that very easily. You can run a Soul Fest for that. The fact that you do need to run that is not amazing, but it is something that we're going to see sort of as a persistent issue with these last three Pokemon. I think this Pokemon is okay, but I think it's sitting very firmly in the B tier. I don't expect that there will be high tier performances with it. I wouldn't be shocked by this Pokemon top cutting a regional, but I don't anticipate there being particularly high performances with it. And I think it is going to feel like it doesn't have a build that it feels super at home on, because electric terrain teams just have not ever formed into a real thing in this format, not in the same way they did back in the Tapu Koko days. So I think Archaludon is at home, at least on an archetype that is proven in Rain, and I think splashes easier onto other archetypes, despite also being fairly Rain specific, or really weird Tinglu screens team specific or something. So generally, I think Iron Leaves is going to struggle, and it's Pokemon that I would find it very difficult to justify drafting. But on the other hand, we have Iron Boulder, so 120 attack. Not as high as Iron Leaves, but it is coming off of a more relevant offensive type in Rock than a less relevant. Oh yeah, also these types are just terrible together offensively, which is why you basically are always Terra fighting, because you generally really need the you need to Terra offensively with this Pokemon to overcome its weaker stabs. And Leaf Blade is okay, but Psyblade and the fact that it doesn't get Zen or Psychic Fangs. So if you don't have electric terrain, this is just a really weak stat move. It's quite painful. It is quite painful. Iron Boulder, much more interesting Pokemon. Access to Mighty Cleave. Hey, it bypasses protection without breaking it. So, the Pokemon I was calculating earlier, the Urshifu? Yeah, Mighty Cleave does the same thing. That's pretty good. Oh, and it's got a good attack stat. Also, it's 95 base power. Now, with moves that are conditional, Hydro Steam is really good because it's really got two good conditions, which are Rain and Sun. Electric Terrain's a really crap condition, and Psychic Terrain doesn't boost as much as Rain does, / as much as Electric Terrain does in this context. And they're both just really awkward to set up with Iron Leaves. Mighty Cleave doesn't need a boost. It's just 95 base power. That's very reasonable when it's on a really good offensive type like Rock. Not as relevant if it was also a Psychic type move. Rock and Psychic is a really mediocre defensive typing. These are all okay resists with the exception of Psychic. Taking less damage from Fake Out is nice. If Regigigas sees much play in the format, having a Rock, a normal resist will be okay, though you will be weak to Knockoff, which is generally its main coverage. Poison resist is not particularly relevant. We haven't seen Glamora pop off in a while. Are there other poisons I should be thinking of? None are immediately coming to mind, though I could fully respect it if someone told me that my music had gone off a little while ago. I don't know why you guys didn't tell me. That's not very polite, actually. But sorry, if is there another poison type I'm not thinking of? Yeah, Amoonguss doesn't run poison moves, so yeah, it's Glora, and then it's Okie dokie. Poison resist is not particularly relevant, though the Psychic move is at least relevant into Okie dokie and Pheasantipity if they see any uptick in play. Being weak to Grass in the format of Rillaboom feels awful. That is the Iron Leaves Grass resist is okay, except the fact that many of the Grass types that are around run moves that are super effective into Iron Leaves, like Fire type Ivy Cudgel or U-turn on Rillaboom, or Knockoff on Grass Ogerpon. yeah, Psychic is just a type that has been getting progressively worse as the types that it's weak to have been getting either maintaining their oppressive strength since they were buffed to not be resisted by steel in Ghost, or like be getting very premium moves with very premium distribution, like knock off a U-turn. So yeah, I think that Mighty Cleave is really good. It's very disruptive. This Pokemon speed stat is really, really, really good. You know, I think once you're breaking 120, you start being a Pokemon that you actually feel okay with as a fast mon. There are so many opposing teams, especially with booster energy, that will not be able to stop a Pokemon of theirs dying to Mighty Cleave without like a defensive Terror or a Sash, which is good. That's a really nice position to be in. Like if you put this next to an Oranguru, or a Florges is probably the better option, with Life Orb, you get the speed boost and you get a Life Orb, and then all of a sudden your Mighty Cleave is just absolutely bopping Pokemon. You know, I think that this is one of the like better use cases for the symbiosis with booster energy that we've seen. Mostly because it's not Iron Treads, right? It's got actual good offensive stat of 120 instead of 112, and it's got like good moves. It's got a good rock move. It doesn't have Psychic Fangs either. It does have Zen, which is okay. It's not great. Its coverage is really nice though. Sacred Sword and Close Combat are good as always. You know, Earthquake and I believe Stomping as well. No Stomping? Okay, no Stomping. Bulldoze still. But Earthquake, you know, Rock Slide is definitely fine as well if you like an Assault Vest set, for example. Wild Charge is an okay coverage move. You still really, I think, are leaning towards mostly Close Combat because you want to hit Pokemon that are that resist your Dual Stab, which means they're either going to be really specific ground dual types or they're going to be steel types. I can't think of like Crocodile's not relevant, Tinglu's not relevant, but you know, CC hits Tinglu if it's around, and it also hits steel types. Yeah, it hits your Heatran. Actually, Heatran's not a good example, but it's like Goldango does not get hit by CC, so that's pretty bad actually. But you do a Throat Chop, which is at least some coverage that can hit Goldango, so that's definitely something to consider. Goldango is actually a bit of a problem. So Iron Boulder. Yeah, I mean the good special defense is also nice, right? Let's look at Rilla. I mean, living a glide like that is definitely good from the AV boom. That's actually really, it's like I wasn't sure if it was going to take it that well or not, because that's obviously its weaker defensive stat. I think that Iron Boulder definitely is going to prove to be like a really consistent threat. I think maybe mildly less than Raging Bolt. I don't know. The speed is just really good, and you can just put this onto any team really. Like it's not a Pokemon that is reliant on having a weather condition or some defensive thing, because it's fast and it's strong, and it has disruption in a sense that it ignores protect. Having just a bunch of traits that are good on a fast Pokemon makes them very splashable. So you don't have to find a team for Iron Boulder to fit on for it to be effective, and that's why I think it's good. I could definitely see this Pokemon. You know, I wouldn't necessarily expect it, but I wouldn't be shocked if we saw this Pokemon again routinely top cutting and winning regionals. Just because it's a good stuff mon, and good stuff mon are good. Now we have Iron Crown, which fits on a specific archetype, but fits on it incredibly well. This is 122 special attack, which is a pretty reasonable offensive stat. You know, it's not Iron Leaves, you know, it's not Raging Bolt, but you know, it's above Walking Wake. No, it's below Walking Wake, but above Gouging Fire. That said, it's a Steel Psychic type. It has access to Expanding Force. And then you're basically just running Flash Cannon, Expanding Force in Psychic terrain, and then being like, okay, am I running Volt Switch? Am I running Terra Blast? Am I, heaven forbid, running Focus Blast because I've got a super sweet Syrup Hydrapple on the team or something? How am I dealing with Steel types? Steel types are definitely the the issue for these three, but much more for Iron Crown because it doesn't have Aura Sphere. Not that Aura Sphere would let you punish Goldango effectively, but the great thing is about Iron Crown, for one thing, really sick name. I think you're often running Speed Booster on this Pokemon as well, because it being fast is really good. There's Psychic Terrain. Well, no. Sorry, Speed Booster generally will be timid. I mean, that's into it, like a bulky, especially defensive Pokemon with an Assault Vest. Well, not naturally especially defensive, but good HP, special defense investment, and an Assault Vest. To like an offensive Goldengo. It's not great, actually. Maybe I'm overrating this one. What's the Armor Rouge number look like? Sorry, not that level 100 Armor Rouge. VGC offensive 38. It's pretty good. The flexibility to run a greater degree of items on the Trick Room E1 maybe feels nice, and it does have slightly higher special attack and the ability to run Modest. But with a booster and Modest, you have the same, like very similar damage, only slightly less. So look, I think Iron Crown is going to be a Pokemon that makes performances. I don't think it's going to be a Pokemon that's consistently top cutting, because it is one that sits mostly in that expanding force sort of thing, and that is not a consistent top cut team. That's like a, that's sort of like a tempo thing that gets you into day 2 pretty reliably. That's the something where you're like, okay, the most important thing is that I don't lose game 1 and 2 in a regional, because otherwise I'll be running into nothing but Indigo Rouge, because they'll have lost like one game and then just have been beating down on any team that is not built well enough to check Indigo Rouge, and I imagine that it will feel similar with Iron Crown, but maybe less effective. Trick Room is obviously generally more disruptive of other game plans than having a fast mode is, but Steel Psychic is a good typing. Unlike the other Psychic dual types, it has 4 weaknesses and it has a wide bevy of resists. The 4 weaknesses are all really bad weaknesses to have. Metagross is in the format. This Pokemon's probably better than Metagross. I think this Pokemon is going to be good. Honestly, I think I can put it in A with Walking Wake. I think it's going to be good, but I don't think it's going to be anywhere near consistent enough to... yeah, like I think you'll see it doing well in regionals, but I don't think you're going to be seeing it winning. I don't know if you'll be seeing it reliably top cutting, but it does seem like the sort of one that led us day 2 very easily. So that makes it through our list of new Pokemon for the new year to look out for in 2024, as Regulation F will be starting up soon. I've only got one more Regulation A video as we make it to the last day of Regulation A on the calendar, and then after that, not Regulation A, Regulation E, and then after that we'll be in Regulation F, and that will be incredibly exciting. So everyone, I hope you have a lovely new year ahead. Please comment down below if there are any goals you have in VGC or in Draft or in Pokemon outside of that, and let me know what you think of how I've been rating these new Pokemon. I think they're all really good, with the exception of this one, and honestly these two. But I definitely think that they're all going to see genuine usage, which was not true for Monkey Dory last DLC. So, without any further ado, goodbye.